Humans did not attack me. They told me a joke, and it fractured half my ribs. Let me explain something about humans that is never included in official diplomatic briefings. They can, without question, destroy you with kindness. And I mean that literally, not as a figure of speech. At this moment, I am lying inside a medical regeneration pod with 4 broken ribs, 2 cracked thorax plates, and a severely bruised breathing spiracle. The cause of all this damage was a joke told by a human female. Yes, a joke. My name is Colvin, and I am a seasoned officer. I am currently on medical leave from my position as a cultural liaison for the Veli Diplomatic Corps. We are the specialists who ensure first contact proceeds smoothly. We handle misunderstandings, explain why certain species find the color purple offensive, and clarify why you should never, under any circumstance, compliment a Dravix egg sac. We are highly trained professionals. Our success rate stands at 98.7%. That is, until we encountered humans. The medical pod vibrates softly around me, circulating regenerative fluids through my system as I lie staring at the curved, transparent ceiling. Above me, the medical bay's pale blue lights pulse steadily, synchronized with my recovery cycle. Here Renath, bless his 6 hearts, has finally stopped asking what happened. During the first dozen explanations, he simply refused to accept my account. The expression on his face, with all 4 eye stalks turning in separate directions, was almost worth the pain. Almost. But I should start from the beginning. I need to explain how a trained diplomatic professional, someone who has successfully negotiated trade agreements with the Zorlathi, a species composed entirely of sentient acid, ended up in such a thoroughly absurd condition. It began 3 cycles ago, when I received my assignment. The transmission arrived through official channels, marked with the highest possible priority designation. The Galactic Council was preparing to establish a joint diplomatic mission with the newly contacted humans, and they required cultural liaisons from a dozen different species. Naturally, I was honored to be selected. Humans had been the subject of galactic discussion for nearly a standard year. Everyone knew about them, the species originating from a Class 12 death world. For context, in the galactic classification system, this denotes a planet so inhospitable that the evolution of sentient life there is almost statistically impossible. Their planet featured gravity 1.3 times the standard, oxygen levels toxic to most species, and extreme weather, including frozen precipitation, wind strong enough to strip flesh from bone, and frequent, enormous spiral storms called hurricanes. The pre-departure briefings we received were, to put it mildly, exhaustive, bordering on paranoid. We learned about human bone density, roughly 3 times that of a standard bipedal species, their muscle fiber structure optimized for pursuit predation, allowing them to chase prey to the point of exhaustion, and their immune systems, which treated most galactic pathogens as negligible. Their pain tolerance, according to the xenobiology report, was inappropriately high for a sentient species. In short, every detail made humans sound like walking weapons, biological marvels disguised under soft skin and approachable smiles. We were repeatedly warned, with diagrams and visual aids, not to startle them, trigger their fight-or-flight responses, or make sudden movements near their young. What nobody had warned us about, what was never mentioned, what apparently didn't make it into any official documentation, was that humans had weaponized something far more dangerous than their death world biology. They had weaponized joy. I shifted slightly in the pod and immediately regretted it as a sharp protest shot through my ribs. The regenerative fluids bubbled gently, working to repair bone and cartilage. It would take 2 more cycles before I was cleared for duty. 2 cycles of lying here, staring at the ceiling, replaying the moment that shattered my entire understanding of danger. Healer Renath appeared at the edge of my vision. 2 of his eye stalks peered down at me, showing a mix of professional concern and personal amusement. He didn't speak, he didn't need to. The medical report he carried said it all. Cause of injury, exposure to human humor. Uncontrolled laughter response. Catastrophic structural failure. That report, by the way, became part of my permanent medical record. It would follow me for the rest of my career, through promotion applications, new postings, and even retirement memoirs. Colvin the Wealthy, hospitalized by a joke. I closed my primary eyelids and exhaled a long, controlled breath through my secondary spiracles, the ones that hadn't cracked. Despite the pain, the embarrassment, and knowing this story would circulate in diplomatic circles for generations, I found myself thinking one very specific, very human thought: it was absolutely worth it. The human diplomatic vessel was called Harmony Bridge, which I later learned reflected the humans' optimistic naming conventions. They named things aspirationally, as if calling a ship Harmony would somehow prevent the 17 species aboard from attempting to poison each other over seating arrangements. I arrived via shuttle with 2 other Valdai staff members and a nervous Quellan administrator, who muttered prayers to his 17 gods. The docking procedure was smooth, professional, exactly what you would expect from a species capable of faster-than-light travel. The airlock cycled open with a soft hiss. I stepped into the main corridor, diplomatic robes flowing behind me, ready to make an excellent first impression. That lasted approximately 7 seconds. "Oh, hey! You must be Culvin." The voice came from my left, bright and enthusiastic. I turned to see my first human in person, not a hologram, not a briefing simulation, but standing about 2 meters away, holding a data pad in one hand and a bag of something orange and suspicious in the other. Her name, I would learn, was Rebecca Torres. According to her official designation, she was a xenocultural specialist focused on nonverbal communication. Dark hair pulled back into what humans called a ponytail, which seemed inefficient. She wore the standard human diplomatic uniform, dark blue with the Earth emblem on the shoulder. She had rolled up her sleeves, almost certainly against regulation, and she was smiling. Humans smile frequently. It's one of the first things you notice. They show their teeth, a gesture that in roughly 73% of known species signals a threat. For humans, however, it means, "Hello, I am friendly." No need to be alarmed. I was alarmed anyway. Yes, I recalled my diplomatic training. I am Culvin, Cultural Liaison, 3rd rank, Wealthy Diplomatic Corps. It is an honor to serve alongside humanity in this historic endeavor, I said. Cool, cool, she replied, nodding. Then she held out a bag of orange objects. Want a chip? Habanero lime. Fair warning, they're pretty spicy. I examined the bag. The contents appeared to be processed food coated in red powder. My translator chip unhelpfully informed me that it contained capsaicin, a compound that triggers pain receptors in most species. Humans consumed it voluntarily. I appreciate the offer, but relaphysiology does not process capsaicin well, I replied carefully. All right, yeah, that makes sense, she said, popping a chip into her mouth and crunching loudly. These things would probably wreck your system. They kind of wreck mine too, honestly. But, like, in a good way. There was no truly good way for food to disrupt digestion. That was a fundamental truth. Yet here was a human casually eating something chemically irritating and describing it as enjoyable. Rebecca gestured down the corridor with her data pad. Come on, I'll show you to your quarters. We set the environmental controls to Valis standards, temperature, humidity, atmospheric composition, the whole deal. Oh, and we put in one of those resting platforms you prefer. Wait, is it true you sleep standing up? That's wild. I tried once and just fell over. She talked as we walked, a steady stream of words punctuated by the crunch of her snack. I found myself observing her movements, the way she gestured, the casual confidence in her stride. Briefings had noted that humans are persistent predators, capable of walking long distances without tiring. Watching her, I could believe it. Her gait had an efficiency suggesting she could continue indefinitely without effort. So, your file says you speak 9 languages, Rebecca said, glancing at her data pad. That's seriously impressive. I can barely handle 3, and one of them is only conversational. How does that work? Do you have extra brain sections or something? She asked. We have a more distributed neural structure than humans, I explained, settling into the rhythm of discussing DR biology. Our memory formation is processed across multiple cortical nodes, which allows more efficient language acquisition and retention. That is so cool, she said, genuinely impressed. Meanwhile, I spent 6 years learning Mandarin and still sound like a toddler ordering food. We passed other crew members in the corridor, a Chitra engineer who gave us a wide berth and 10 nervously, 2 melon delegates floating in mobility spheres filled with their native ocean water, who burbled something my translator rendered as a polite greeting, and more humans, nodding, waving, or saying hey as they passed. They were everywhere, and all seemed unusually relaxed. That should have been my first warning. When a species from a hostile world behaves so comfortably in a space station full of aliens, it usually means one of 2 things: either they are oblivious to danger, which seemed unlikely given humanity's rapid technological progress, or they are so confident in their ability to handle threats that concern simply doesn't register. I was beginning to think it was the latter. Rebecca stopped at a door marked with intricate glyphs, a nice touch. She pressed her palm against the access panel, and it slid open. Here you go. Home sweet home for the next 3 months. If you need anything, just ping me. I'm in Section 7, Room 42. Oh, and we have a diplomatic dinner tonight, 1800 hours, main conference hall. Casual dress. Nothing fancy. It'll be fun. She said fun like it was genuinely enjoyable. I should have known better. I really should have. The main conference hall had been set up for what humans called a mixer, which seemed to mean, throw everyone together and see what happens. Around 40 beings from 12 different species mingled, standing, floating, or, in the case of the Quellan delegation, hovering anxiously near the exits. I arrived on time, wearing my formal diplomatic sash, which was far more formal than anyone else's attire. Humans had taken casual dress very literally. Rebecca stood near a table covered in food, wearing something she called a sweater, which seemed to serve no real purpose other than to be, in her words, cozy. "Collivan, you made it," she waved me over, enthusiasm clear. "Come on, you have to try the food." We went full international potluck style. That's Indian curry, Ethiopian injera, Mexican tamales, and Swedish meatballs. Oh, and stay away from the kimchi unless your species can handle fermentation. Trust me on that one. I approached the table with the caution usually reserved for live explosives. Every dish smelled aggressive, not bad, necessarily, but assertive, as if the ingredients had fought each other before being plated. "This is all human food?" I asked, eyeing a steaming bowl of red liquid with floating vegetables. "Yep. Earth food. We have hundreds of different cuisines depending on the region and culture. It's kind of our thing," she said, picking up a plate and layering it with daring combinations. "We're really into food. Like, really into it. Some of our wars have even been fought over spices. Actual wars. People died for cinnamon." A Chitrak named Vixthal clicked his mandibles nervously across the table. "Your species fought over plants used for flavoring?" he asked. "Oh yeah," Rebecca said brightly, handing me a plate with small, unidentifiable samples. The spice trade had been enormous. Humans had sailed across oceans, colonized lands, and committed regrettable acts, all in pursuit of more interesting flavors. We've calmed down since, but yes, we were intensely focused on seasoning. I looked at the plate. Nothing was moving, which I took as a good sign. Some items were colors not seen in nature, at least not colors that suggested survival. More delegates arrived. The Melm floated their spheres to a designated area. A group of Dravik engineers huddled together, suspicious of the humans. Humans moved through the crowd, introducing themselves, shaking hands, adjusting greetings for each species, laughing at things that weren't inherently funny, but somehow were, because they laughed. Eventually, we sat at long tables arranged in a rough circle. I ended up between Rebecca and a human named Marcus Chen, an exobiologist who wouldn't stop asking questions about reproductive habits, a topic growing increasingly awkward. Rebecca redirected the conversation. "So, Colvin, what do you think of the ship so far? Are your quarters satisfactory?" "The accommodations are excellent," I said. "Very careful attention to environmental needs." "Good. We had done our homework. Hosting this many species at once was a first, so we were anxious about errors." Rebecca took a sip of a fizzy drink that hissed when opened. "Carbonation. Humans intentionally added gas to beverages to make them more refreshing," she explained. A Melm delegate, her voice transmitted through her sphere's translator, asked a question that had been on everyone's mind: "Is it true that Earth has weather that regularly destroys infrastructure?" "Oh yeah," Marcus said, nodding. "Hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, tsunamis. Full disaster package. My hometown got hit by a tornado when I was 12, it ripped the roof off our school." The table went silent. Vixthal's antenna drooped. "And then your school was rebuilt?" the delegate asked. "Sure," Marcus said. "Took about 6 months. Classes were in temporary buildings until then." He shrugged like it was ordinary. "Stuff gets destroyed, you rebuild, you move on." Rebecca leaned forward, warming to the topic. "Earth's a bit of a mess. Volcanoes explode randomly. Storms can drop frozen water hard enough to dent vehicles. Temperatures swing from 50 degrees Celsius in summer to minus 40 degrees Celsius in winter, depending on location. And sometimes the ground just opens up, sinkholes. Those are fun." "Fun?" I couldn't stop myself from asking. "Not fun like enjoyable," she said, grinning. "More like, huh, look at that. Nature's trying to kill us again. Let's film it and post it online." Humans document attempts on their lives. It's popular content. The Aquelan administrator paled, a greenish shift in his species' color spectrum. Marcus continued. "Some of the most watched videos show storms, disasters, or people doing dangerous things. We even have extreme sports, humans jumping off cliffs with parachutes, surfing massive waves, climbing mountains without safety gear, for the adrenaline." The table went from silent to stunned. I could see the Dravik quietly recalculating humanity's threat level. This was not the controlled diplomatic information from briefings. Humans were casually describing a nightmare planet as if it were just an inconvenient roommate. Marcus pulled out his personal data pad. Oh, here, let me show you. This is footage from the Australia fires a few years ago. That whole region burned for months, and people stayed. Vixel clicked in disbelief. Where else could they go? It's home. Marcus stated it plainly. It seemed to explain everything and yet explain nothing, leaving everything even more confusing. Rebecca finished her fizzy drink and smiled at the group, completely unaware that she had just made every non-human at the table extremely uncomfortable. So, anyone want to hear about the time my great-grandmother survived a tsunami by climbing a tree? It's a great story, really funny, actually. She tells it at every family reunion. Funny. A survival story about a massive wall of water was considered funny. I was beginning to realize that humans had a very different relationship with danger, and I had no idea just how different it was about to get. Dinner continued for another hour, and with each passing minute, the humans revealed new and unsettling facts about their planet, history, and astonishing comfort with chaos. We learned that humans kept predators as pets. They consumed fungi purely for enjoyment. They had invented roller coasters, mechanical devices designed to simulate the experience of falling to your death, and they paid money to ride them multiple times, just for fun. By the end of the meal, I felt like I had survived a psychological endurance test. My threat assessment routines were firing constantly, trying to process the sheer absurdity of everything I had heard. The melon delegates had retreated into their spheres, unresponsive. Vixel was compulsively grooming his antenna. The Quillen administrator had excused himself 30 minutes ago and had not returned. But the humans? Relaxed. Happy. Rebecca laughed at something Marcus said, her entire face animated, gesturing with her hands in that exuberant, wholly human way. Then she turned to the table, her expression bright. Hey, so this has been amazing, getting to know everyone. I feel like we've shared a lot about human culture tonight. Maybe a little too much, she laughed, glancing at the shell-shocked aliens around her. But there's one thing we haven't really covered, human humor. Oh no, she said, grinning. Humans have this thing called comedy. It's a whole art form. We tell stories or make observations specifically to trigger laughter. It's how we process stress, trauma, existential dread, you know, the usual stuff. And since we're all here, maybe I could share one? A joke. Nothing too complicated, just a fun little story. Would that be okay? The table exchanged glances. None of us knew what to expect, but after everything we'd heard tonight, how bad could it possibly be? I silently noted the dramatic irony of that thought. Sure, I said, because as the cultural liaison, it was literally my job to engage with human customs, even when they sounded vaguely threatening. We would be honored to experience human humor. Rebecca's smile widened. Okay, awesome. One of my favorites, it's about a man, a penguin, and a very confused police officer. She settled into her chair, and I noticed a subtle change in posture. Her voice became more rhythmic, more deliberate. This was a performance. Humans didn't just tell jokes, they performed them. So, a guy is driving through town, middle of the day, windows down, nice weather, and he has a penguin in the passenger seat. Just a penguin, full-grown, sitting there like it's completely normal. My brain immediately scrambled. Why did he have a flightless aquatic bird in his car? How did he acquire it? What were the legal implications? But Rebecca didn't pause for these critical questions. A police officer sees this, right? And of course he's concerned, because that's not something you see every day. Even on a weird day. So he pulls the guy over, walks up to the window, and says, "Sir, why do you have a penguin in your car?" And the guy looks at the penguin, then back at the officer, and says, "I don't know, man. It just waddled up to my car this morning." Marcus was already grinning. He had heard this story before. He knew exactly what was coming. The officer paused, thinking it over, and said, "Okay, you can't just drive around with a penguin. You need to take him to the zoo." The man nodded. "Yeah, okay. That makes sense. I'll take him to the zoo." The officer let him go with a warning, feeling satisfied. Animals safely delivered to the proper facility. Problem solved. Rebecca paused, taking a sip of water, letting the story breathe. This was deliberate. She was setting up the next moment. The following day, the same officer was on patrol. And guess what he saw? The same guy, same car, same penguin in the passenger seat. Only now, the penguin was wearing sunglasses. Vixel made a confused clicking sound. Why would a penguin need vision protection? "Hold on, we're getting there," Rebecca said with a grin. The officer pulled him over again, a little irritated this time. "Sir, I thought I told you to take that penguin to the zoo." The man looked completely sincere. "I did. We had a great time. Today I'm taking him to the beach." There was a beat of silence. Then it clicked. The structure, the misdirection, the subversion of expectation. The officer assumed, take him to the zoo, meant delivering the penguin for permanent residence. But the man interpreted it as, take him for a visit, and continued taking the penguin on outings as if it were a companion. The penguin wearing sunglasses implied enthusiastic participation, absurd, because penguins don't understand recreational tourism. But the image, the sheer ridiculous, wholesome insanity of a man treating a penguin like a friend, showing it a good time, while the officer grew increasingly confused about how to handle this, was priceless. Technically not illegal, definitely not normal. And I started laughing. Except wealthy don't laugh. We don't have the biological infrastructure for it. Laughter requires specific respiratory structures, diaphragm muscles, and neural pathways my species never evolved. We express amusement through color changes in our cranial ridges, pleasant hums in our vocal cords, or slight swaying motions. My body hadn't received that memo. My thorax contracted rapidly, involuntarily. My breathing spiracles opened and closed in spasms, trying to process the sudden surge of oxygen my system demanded. My ribs, designed for slow, steady breathing, flexed in ways they were not meant to. I couldn't stop. The joke triggered something in my neurochemistry, a cascade my biology had no framework to handle. I was experiencing the sensation of laughter, but my body had no proper way to process it. It hurt. Oh ancestors, it hurt, but I couldn't stop. Rebecca's voice suddenly sounded alarmed. Colvin, hey, are you okay? My vision blurred. The contractions intensified. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I registered a sharp cracking sensation in my lower thorax. That was very, very bad. Marcus was on his feet, yelling for a medical team. Vixthel froze. Teen stood upright in alarm. The melon delegates made distressed bubbling noises. And Rebecca, oh, poor Rebecca, looked absolutely horrified. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. Oh God. Someone get a medic. I broke him. I broke the alien with a penguin joke. The last thing I remember before the medical team arrived was thinking, with perfect clarity amidst the pain and chaos and sheer absurdity, that the penguin was wearing sunglasses. Tiny little sunglasses. On its way to the beach. And then everything faded to black, and somehow I was still laughing, my body attempting to laugh in that awful, reflexive way, as I lost consciousness during what may be the most absurd medical incident in the history of interstellar diplomacy. Official cause of injury, penguin joke. Prognosis, lifelong embarrassment. Was it worth it? Completely. And that brings us back to the present. Me, lying in this medical pod, staring up at the ceiling and reflecting on the deeply ironic cosmic joke that is my life. The regenerative fluids have done their job. My ribs are mostly repaired, although healer Renath insists I remain under observation for another half cycle. He says it is to ensure my respiratory system has fully stabilized and will not unexpectedly fail if I encounter anything humorous. He is being sarcastic. I think I am starting to understand sarcasm now. It is apparently a human trait. And it seems to be spreading. The door to the medical bay slides open with a soft hiss. I do not need to turn my head to know who has entered. I recognize the rhythm of her footsteps, the faint squeak of her shoes against the polished floor. Hey, Rebecca says quietly as she approaches the pod. She looks exhausted. Her hair is no longer tied back in its usual ponytail, instead falling loosely around her shoulders. She is holding a data pad close to her chest, almost like a shield. How are you feeling? She asks. Like I was attacked by a flightless bird wearing eyewear, I reply. Her expression shifts into something complex, caught between wanting to laugh and feeling responsible for what happened. I'm so sorry, she says, and she genuinely means it. I can hear the sincerity in her voice. I had no idea that would happen. We ran biological compatibility tests for food, atmosphere, gravity, and pathogens, but somehow no one thought to check whether jokes could be dangerous. It never crossed our minds. How do you not test for jokes? I ask, carefully adjusting my position in the pod. Because, I continue, no other species has turned joy into a potential weapon the way humans have. You are the only ones who can quite literally kill with kindness. Or, in this case, with comedy. Close enough. She pulls a chair closer and sits down with a tired sigh. The report has already been sent to the Galactic Council. There's going to be an entirely new section added to human interaction protocols, warning labels, humor advisories, safety briefings. I'm fairly certain I'll be remembered for all the wrong reasons. You're not alone, I say. I'm the alien who was hospitalized by a joke that will now exist in historical records. There will be academy courses about this. Future diplomats will study my mistake as a warning. That wasn't a mistake, Rebecca says firmly. You were doing your job. You engaged with human culture. How were you supposed to know your species lacks the biological framework for laughter? That information wasn't in any of our databases either, We fall into a brief silence, broken only by the steady hum of medical equipment and the distant sounds of the ship's systems. After a moment, I speak again. Can I ask you something? Of course. Why do humans do it? The jokes, the laughter, the way you find humor in everything, even in terrible situations. At that dinner, we heard stories about disasters, about your planet constantly trying to kill you, and you laughed about it. Why? Rebecca remains quiet for a long moment, considering the question. When she speaks, her tone is gentler. Because if we didn't laugh, we would cry. Earth is difficult. Life is difficult. We evolved on a planet that challenged us constantly, again and again. And the ones who endured were those who could face the chaos and find something humorous within it. For us, humor is not merely entertainment. It is a survival tool. It is how we deal with trauma, how we connect with each other, how we remind ourselves that even when everything feels unbearable, we are still here, still upright, still capable of happiness. I take this in, turning it over carefully in my thoughts. So you transformed suffering into something you use to fight suffering. Yes, she says with a faint smile. Yes, I suppose we did. That is, and I say this with complete respect, entirely irrational. We hear that often. There is another pause. Then I ask the question that has been on my mind since I woke up in this pod. When I am healed, when I am cleared to return to duty, will you tell me another joke? Her eyebrows rise sharply. Seriously, after what just happened? Especially because of what just happened. I say I need to understand this. I need to learn how to process humor without, causing structural damage. If I am going to work with humans, truly work with you, I need to build tolerance, like your capsaicin. Start small, then gradually increase. Rebecca looks at me for a long moment, and then she laughs. A real, genuine laugh. I feel my cranial ridges shift to a calm blue shade, which is the Veli equivalent of a smile. Okay. She says that once I am healed, she will tell me another joke, but we are starting very small, at the level of a simple knock-knock joke. Healer Renath will be standing by with emergency equipment. Deal. She stands up, slips the datapad under her arm, and walks toward the door. At the threshold, she pauses and looks back at me. For what it is worth, Colvin, you are a very capable diplomat. Most people would submit a formal complaint. Some might even trigger an interstellar incident. Instead, you are asking for more jokes. Well, I reply, settling back into the pod support, if humans can survive on a death world by laughing at it, the least I can do is try to laugh with them, even if it proves hazardous. Let us try to avoid that outcome this time, she says with a grin. No guarantees. She leaves, and I am alone once more with my thoughts, my healing ribs, and the clear understanding that my life has become far more interesting, and far more dangerous, since humans joined the galactic community. And honestly, I would not choose it any other way. Somewhere in the station, I'm certain, there's already a file being prepared, updated xenobiological protocols, revised safety standards, and warning labels that will accompany human cultural exchanges for the next millennium. The notes probably include guidance on humor, laughter risk assessments, and instructions to proceed carefully under medical supervision. My legacy, my contribution to galactic civilization, has been undone by a penguin in sunglasses. And you know what? I would do it all over again in an instant because Rebecca was right. If you cannot laugh at the absurdity of existence, at the cosmic joke of an overly serious Veli diplomat being hospitalized by a wholesome story of a man and his penguin companion on adventures, then what is the point? Humans didn't just survive their hostile world, they flourished. They transformed it into art. And now, lying in this medical pod, ribs sore, dignity in tatters, and reputation thoroughly destroyed, I finally grasp what makes them truly dangerous. It isn't their strength. It isn't their endurance. It isn't even their remarkable immune systems or their ability to consume poison for amusement. It is their joy, unshakable, unstoppable, and utterly unreasonable, despite a universe that has given them every reason to surrender. That, ultimately, is the human trait that never appears in any briefing.